I feel bad for the NDC. All the indications I'm getting now is not for them to, manage expectations. They're escalating the expectations. You see my brother here, I believe that. No problem.
But he was the same person who said it's important that expectations are managed.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, but because you have to do that.
Okay.
You have to do that. Because if you hear from the finance minister when he came to parliament and during his vetting, it was very clear. It's like the tax will go. But now, since yesterday, you saw there's some operation at foot to say that, if anything at all, the betting tax should stay. The reality you're going to face is that the funding gap that will be created, if you take these three tax handles away, how do you fund the budget? How do you fund your programs? And here's a government that came on the wings of we will drive a certain reset agenda that bring better days to Ghana, economic so-and-so to Ghana, when we know that they don't have the capacity for it. But so I feel bad for them. But anyway, before I get into this conversation, yesterday, Ghana Statistical Service released their data on the economy. And this is the first time we've had an instance like that because you would normally have the budget read with third quarter data, and then the outturns for the fourth quarter will be reported much later in the year. And so the conversation is settled by what they released yesterday. Now, what the President, His Excellency John Dramani Mahama, erroneously characterized as an economy that has been mishandled, is actually an economy that is seemingly, of course, we've known this all along, because if you look at a third quarter turnout of 6.2% GDP, then you are clear in your mind that that economy is a much better economy.
In fact, the Ghanaian Times reports it.
Yeah.
Page 12.
Exactly. So we have a conclusion of the matter where you have an economy in a difficult time, exceeding expectation and target. We're scheduled to do 3% GDP, was revised 4% now, about 1% and a half, almost 2% above the targeted 4%, 5.7%. And so that is clearly way better than the NDC, His Excellency John Dramani Mahama, handed over to Akufo-Addo, His Excellency, on January 2017. And as a result of that, our debt to GDP ratio dropped significantly. Whilst His Excellency John Dramani Mahama, the President, who is sending his finance minister today to read the budget, left an economy with a debt to GDP ratio of 73.3. Okay?
Sorry?
That's not accurate.
You mean the figure?
No problem. But they left a debt to GDP ratio of 73.3, is inheriting a debt to GDP ratio almost 62%.
Okay.
62%. That tells you how sustainable our debt sustainability program is going, is going to be. If you look at, if you move ahead, we're looking at attaining a 55% debt to GDP by 2028. This tells you that we're on track to get to that number. And so the economy His Excellency John Dramani Mahama has inherited is not the economy he characterized to organized labor. It's not an economy he came to the State of the Nation to describe. It's an economy that is better than what he has ever managed in this country. So we are judging him by the standard he has attained in his first term as president, 2013 to 2016. He's managed, or 2017, he's managed the economy abysmally, and it is his economy that we can say has been criminally managed. If you look at what the outturns are at the end of 2024. Okay, so all this talk about the economy is difficult, let's paint a clear picture. The picture has been painted by an independent institution who is not interested in who gets high or who gets low. Historically, having to publish this data before the budget. So I expect the finance minister to report this data. The history must capture this data, and the measurement of which put side by side is much, much better than those who say they are economic messiahs. Their record as we have seen it, their record as is reported by they themselves, is nothing compared to Akufo-Addo's. That is not to say that we couldn't have done better, but we have done much, much better than His Excellency John Dramani Mahama has ever done. And this episode in his career to run for another 4 years, we know, judging by his 4 years, that he's not going to be able to do any better than he has done before. Now, the choices that face them in today's budget, Moro, is one that I think, if I were them, as I was saying earlier, would be for them to manage expectation. If you look at their bracing advocacy for the removal of these 3 taxes, and we haven't heard so much any creative means to make up for the revenue or the funding gap that will be created by these 3 tax handles that they are so bold about going to remove, it worries me. It worries me because we're going to have challenges in terms of, one, attaining the funding the government activities for 2025, and also whether or not they would have the money to drive the growth that is needed to create the jobs that they promised they were going to create. The rail sector may suffer because of this. Because, in the budget, you're looking for 3 essential things. One of them is the revenue sources. So we're going to be looking for where are the sources for the revenue that government will be, collecting to be able to manage the second component, which is expenditure allocations to MDAs across board, and then also debt management. Now, so debt management, we've done a great job for them. They have ample fiscal space. Debt to GDP about 62%. So great stuff there. They just have to build on the program to be able to achieve 55 debt to GDP ratio by 2028. So that is done for them. But then the key issue is revenue. You can set any expenditure target you want or estimate how much you want to spend. If the revenue sources don't generate or does not show that you'll be able to generate that, it actually is a disincentive and undermine confidence in the private sector, because people can see, okay, that what projection you are making, assuming he comes today to make a projection of maybe say about 250 billion in revenue, right? You can make a reasonable deduction whether or not he's able to attain that by looking at the tax handles. Okay, and if you cannot, from the tax handles, tell that yes, it's feasible to attain that, then you are by that point wondering what a deficit will be, because they have to borrow to cover the gap. And so clearly, in my view, they face that challenge when they're saying they're going to remove that. I think the estimate is now about 7 billion or so funding gap that will be created by the removal of those 3 tax handles. So what
6.8.
6.8, but 7 billion.
Almost 7 billion, yeah.
So the idea for me is, how is the NDC going to make up for that hole?
The fiscal loss.
Yes, that funding gap that's going to be generated, how are they going to make up for it? I see a probability of maybe rationalizing, the VAT that will be taxed. Either the incident falls on everyday Ghanaian or on business. You realize that whatever goes around comes around. So if it's business, it will come around and hit the citizens. So there's no way there will be any form of tax rationalization or tax rearrangement or readjustment that will not affect the people. It's like rain, right? If it's raining here and you're out, there's no way you can escape a drop. So really, it's going to come around and affect the people, which they claim that, we're going to improve cost of living, right? If you're improving cost of living, that means you are promoting a certain policy view that is ameliorating or taking away the burden of of prices on your citizenry. So if you are by any tactics or strategy in terms of tax policy resulting in any increase in any way, shape or form, you are not improving cost of living. So I see that difficulty. The other thing also that I see is a contradiction in the NDC's own nomenclature for these ministries that they have created. You have created a ministry for energy and green transition. Now you have created that, and you have targeted to remove a tax component which is almost akin to a sin tax, the emission tax. That's a positive tax, which is designed for transition from whatever energy to green energy. And then you have created a ministry, name it green transition, but you don't like green tax. I don't get it. All right? And that's why I was saying that So
you're suggesting that you see policy inconsistency?
Inconsistency. Because if you want green transition, what are you going to be doing at the Ministry of Energy, all right, to attain that objective? It presupposes that there will be some policy drive. One of them is to discourage and encourage green transition. And so the emission tax, which is designed to move us away from fossil fuel to green energy, is one that you should canvass for. Otherwise, you are just doing politics or keeping up appearance by saying green transition. And I want to know what the Ministry of Energy and Green Transition has to say about that. And maybe cabinet to say that, look, leave this tax. I know you've indicated that you want to remove it during the campaign, but yet you have created a Ministry of Green Transition. This is something that Minister of Energy and Green Transition should propose to Finance Minister, that say that consistent with our policies to transition, these are some of the things that we can do to change behavior in line with the direction we want to go. And so therefore, this tax must stay, and there'll be a justifiable basis for that. But then they are prioritizing politics over policy. So they're going to cancel it, and we're going to see how the green transition will advance. Otherwise, it will just be a name tagged along, but no effect. The budget today, I want to see what government priorities are in the real sector. Because Boro, that's where the action is. That's where growth is. That's where the masses of the people that the NDC say they are going to help, that's where they operate. What is going to be the allocations there? What's going to be the focus, the drive? In agriculture, in industry, in the services sector, what is the priority of government, and what will the allocations be? They've talked about infrastructure. What would be the capital allocation for capital expenditure on that front? And so I see them being in a very difficult situation, and they are not helping themselves. They are doubling down. What I've heard is some operations they are doing with some of their sympathetic commentators about the betting tax. Then the campaign there is to try and keep that, because maybe it is also a sin tax discouraging a certain behavior. But I think that is also inconsistent if that's the argument, because really you have established a betting commission or game commission or whatnot, and you are licensing these game outlets to do business.
I've heard Thomas Zampem, who's the Deputy Minister.
Yeah.
The MP for Sojaman say that they will keep fidelity to the promises they made to Ghanaians.
Yeah.
So they're going to scrap it.
No problem.
For them, it's not negotiable.
If I were them, I would listen. I mean, on the emission tax and even on this one, because what you're trying to do is inhibit these businesses, right? I see the rationale there, but what is the business case you are making? Because if you want to attract more foreign investors into your country, it's a barrier to entry, which barrier to entry will affect, foreign direct investment and the drive to grow the economy. And so they will take it. That's why I'm saying that they are prioritizing politics over policy. There's one thing to campaign and another thing to deliver. And so I'm not saying they should change that, but I'm saying that the difficulties that would arise, how is that going to be addressed? The funding gap. And that's, for me, the key thing I want to see in that budget today, that the rail sector will be prioritized, and that prioritization requires funding allocation. Where are they going to find the money to do it? My other concern is the deficit, okay? Because now we are achieving some financial debt sustainability, and we have a target of 55 by 2028. Is that going to be impaired by a gap in the budget that somehow government had to find the money to fund it, and therefore jeopardizes that path, okay? And that is there. And then the ultimate one also, which the finance minister talked about considerably during his vetting, is one to do with expenditure cuts. You know, when government cuts expenditure, it is not just fine English, it's actually real. It is people. It affects lives. It's like you sitting at Metro and say we're going to cut expenditure, right? It will mean that when we come here, we won't get water and tea, right? It makes sense for the books, but it affects the people you are bringing. You understand? You cut it by, okay, well, let's shrink the time we're allowing for the discussion. Let's sell part of it for commercial. Okay, it's good, but then the content is affected. So when the minister says they are going to cut expenditure, almost all of his answers, about 50% of the answers he gave when it came to the vetting was that, oh, cut expenditure, cut expenditure, cut expenditure. When they ask him, yeah, response is cut expenditure. It's good English when you're in opposition. But now when you are dealing with the reality of governance, when you are cutting expenditure, you are cutting perhaps teacher trainee and nursing trainee allowance, okay? When you are cutting expenditure, then you are recanting on your own promise to say that first-year students in universities or tertiary education would have first-year fees paid because you have to have the money. If you don't have it, you cut that expenditure. It also means that you end up cutting free SHS, okay, components, aspects of it, because you have to cut expenditure. If you say you cut goods and services, yes, goods and services, I just gave you that explanation. Goods and services, consumables in MDAs, right? If you are cutting those, it affects, people. And so it's not just a simplistic argument to say, well, cut expenditure as if you are bringing anything novel. You're actually affecting. And ultimately, cutting expenditure actually affects the economy because government spending stimulates the economy. There's only sometimes the challenge with that is how targeted is that. So government can use its spending to target consumption in local industries to drive growth there and say, well, as a matter of policy, any rice consumption, any water consumption, any so-and-so consumption must be local. And that is a policy direction that must be pursued. So if you are cutting expenditure of government expenditure, you are actually undermining, you are affecting the economy in the long run.